Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. The show is always presented by FanDuel, and goodness gracious, everybody, we got a lot to discuss. From the rumor mill today, we've got a big Jonathan Greenard news item that we're going to dive into first, and then Kyler Murray. The reports are out that he's going to be released, and there's a tweet right now from Ian Rappaport who says that the Vikings are the team to watch to land Kyler Murray. And if you've been watching the show, you know that this is something that I have advocated really from day one, is Kyler Murray to the Vikings. We will dive a little deeper into that. I put out my article at purpleinsider.football on the case for Kyler Murray if you want to read that while you are watching along, and we'll get to your comments. A big day. We've got Daniel Jones news, a surprise retirement in the NFL that would normally be the biggest news of the day, but there's so much else going on. So let's get right into it. Jonathan Greenard. I did not see this coming, that Jonathan Greenard would be part of the conversation for how the Vikings are going to create cap space. So Adam Schefter, in the middle of the day, here I am just out walking the dog thinking that there's not going to be any big news items necessarily coming out, and he drops this on us. The Vikings are now open to trading Pro Bowl edge rusher Jonathan Greenard. They would like to keep Greenard, but they also have salary cap issues they're working through that have led to trade conversations. And adding to this was Albert Breer, who said the Vikings situation with Jonathan Greenard is a bit complex. Greenard is seeking a market correction to his contract. Per sources, he's due $19 million and would like a raise. Minnesota is comfortable with him at his current numbers. The team views him as one of the best players and won't just let him go. But if someone comes in with a big offer, then a deal is there to be had. Now, the reason that this is so surprising to me that they would even consider a Jonathan Greenard trade is because of how important he has been to this team over the last 2 years. I know the sack numbers were down, but anybody who watched, as you guys all did, or even if you just looked at the numbers a little bit beyond just sacks, which we know can bounce up and down, his pressure rate, his pass rush win rate, all those things were consistent with what Jonathan Greenard has been in the past, and you would assume that a bounce back season would be coming. Plus, they also played a lot of running and scrambling quarterbacks in 2025, and I think that that hurt everybody's ability to rack up their sack numbers. But Greenard is in his prime and is, I think, one of the 12 to 14 best pass rushers in the NFL. And then what we also saw from Greenard last year, especially really starting in training camp, was that he took on a real leadership role of this team, got a C on the chest, and was one of the vocal leaders, and it was out there in training camp every day pushing guys. And I think there's a ton of respect for Greenard from the coaching staff, inside the room, Brian Flores. And when you think about that edge rushing position, to have Greenard and Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner rotating, that was the one position that we were talking about. Well, you don't really need to discuss that in the draft. Edge rusher is set. There's a lot of other stuff that we could certainly talk about for positions in the draft that they might need to look into, but edge rusher was all set. And then now you'd start saying, well, actually, if they trade him away, then Van Ginkel is on the back end of his career and contract, and you've got Dallas Turner and literally nothing else past that. So why would they consider trading Jonathan Greenard? This feels much bigger than just, hey, he needs a raise, and they are comfortable with his current number. If you compare his production in terms of quarterback pressures, win rate, and even sacks over the last 3 seasons, you could definitely put him up there as a second tier pass rusher in the NFL. Your first tier is freak guys who just blow away the NFL. I mean, that's Myles Garrett, that's Max Crosby, that's Aiden Hutchinson. But right below that is someone like Jonathan Greenard. And the fact that, this year he was playing through some injury, but still was doing a good job while he was battling this oblique, and they finally shut him down at the end of the year, because why risk any sort of injury, but he's somebody that has been very durable for them, has been on the field. In 2024. He's playing basically every single snap out there, which was a lot for sure for him. But I mean, he's somebody who's going to give you 50 snaps a game and be out there, not somebody that you want to part ways with. So why would they potentially consider doing this? One thing that came to mind right away for me was, is the competitive rebuild back? Is this another competitive rebuild season now for the Vikings? Are they looking at, now that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is gone, trying to get their salary cap situation back on track, trying to get their spending back on track? And then also, it really stood out to me the other day that Rob Brzezinski said, I think this was when he was doing his sit down with the Vikings, I believe you build through the draft and then retaining your core players. I was like, okay, so is this going to be a shift now to stockpiling as much draft capital as they possibly can, rather than do this approach where they give away a lot of draft picks for win now type of players, which we've seen them do in recent years when you're acquiring guys like, a TJ Hawkinson through a trade, or the number of other players that they've brought in through trades. If they were to move out Jonathan Greenard, that would be a shift to, now we're going to stockpile as much draft capital as possible. We're not going to hand out these gigantic contracts right now until those players are drafted and developed, and then it's time to pay them, rather than going outside the building, looking for free agents and taking swings at guys that other teams have decided that they didn't want, which, I mean, I still think built a pretty darn good roster for the Vikings over the last couple of years. And Greenard is one of the biggest hits in free agency of probably the past 5 years. But if that's the way that they want to do it, if the Wilfs put Rob Brzezinski in charge to basically have someone come in and say, all right, we're going to do some real accounting here. We're not going to just spend all this crazy amounts of cash. We're not going to sacrifice the next 5 years of the salary cap or whatever it might be in order to jam everything into 2026. That's kind of what this suggests, is that they are taking a more long-term approach. Now, that doesn't mean tanking. You can, as they've shown, live in the middle. And I would even say that a team like the Seattle Seahawks did live in the middle and then was able to finally break through after doing what? Drafting and developing and hitting and retaining a lot of their talent. That's how they got there. It's not that it's impossible to build through free agency, and New England certainly did it this year around Drake May, but it's not easy to do. It is a lot easier if you have a stockpile of draft picks and you do it like Chicago, you do it like Detroit. Now, those teams had to tank. We know the Vikings don't want to do that, but can you at least get those players in the middle of the first round, get more draft picks, and get to the point where you're building up this roster of players that are cost effective, so then you can go in and add final pieces? If that's the shift, then they've got some stuff to go through the next couple of years with the number of expensive players and the amount of cash and the amount of money that they spent. And they might be trying to get ahead of that rather than facing that down, a total rebuild and a total teardown after 2026. So this is not what I expected. What I expected was the Vikings to, in 2026, take every amount of cash and capital and draft stock that they could muster up and push it all to the middle of the table and say, we're going to take one more shot at this, because that was really what they aimed to do going back to the original competitive rebuild, was to have it all pushed to the middle of the table in 2025 and 2026. There's even a quote from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah last year. I think he told Jeremy Fowler that they were looking at kind of a 3-year type of window with this core. And I remember writing about it, like, what's the real window? Does it actually get to 2027? The answer was, I didn't think so. I thought it could get through 2026. But now, if they trade Jonathan Greenard, there's a bit of a shift there to, you're going to have your older core and your star players like your Jefferson, your Darisaw, and so forth, assuming health. But then you're going to be bringing in a younger group of drafted players, and you're not going to be going into free agency and getting 7 different free agents to fill this spot, this spot, this spot, and this spot. And you might have positions on the field where you're either looking for somebody to take a big step forward, or a rookie playing, or somebody that you went into free agency and maybe only spent $2 million on. Maybe instead of talking about this safety or that corner or that running back that are the top free agents, we might end up talking about guys that we haven't even really heard of, or are, hey, this guy's 34 years old and he's going to come in and fill this spot for 1 year to kind of bridge them to the next guy. That, again, is not really what I had anticipated. Now, with Greenard, there is a conversation for sure to be had of, should you just sign him to a contract extension? Because while Dallas Turner did take a big step forward last year, and especially down the stretch when he was playing Greenard's role, he was very impressive. And his pressure rate was good. His pass rush success in terms of PFF grade was good. I'm talking about the second half of the season. And then the sack production turned out to be pretty good as well. So I think that, he's locked in as someone who's going to be part of the team. But when you look around the league, you see a lot of teams that have rotations on the defensive line, rotations at the edge position, rotations on the interior D line. And if they trade Greenard and they cut Hargrave and maybe even part ways with Jonathan Allen on a June 1st cut, which would create more cap space, I mean, you're talking about now, okay, Van Ginkel, Turner, Jalen Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, and what else? I mean, that's pretty much it for your D-line. And now you're going to have players coming in, young players. You're going to have to draft guys. You're going to have to get some veterans to just fill spots. You're going to have undrafted free agents who have been developing behind the scenes, maybe have to play next year. I mean, that sounds like more of a rebuilding type of thing than it does a team that's pushing all the chips to the middle of the table to try to win in 2026. And maybe they're saying to Brian Flores, well, we gave you a heck of a lot of money to come back and make this thing work and find those guys. But I think that would be way more challenging without Jonathan Greenard. If they were to move on from Greenard, anything less than a second round pick would be bad. Because, I mean, you're talking about a really good player. And already I saw probably 15 different reporters or analysts or fans from other teams being like, this guy makes a lot of sense for our team. There should be at least half of the NFL giving the Minnesota Vikings a call about Jonathan Greenard. I mean, I think that they should aim even higher, but it's hard to get first round picks away from teams. Now, there is something that they could do if they really wanted to go down the road, which would be to trade Jonathan Greenard for something like a 2026 third and a 2027 first from a needy team. That might be something that you try to work out, is instead of this draft, because teams are more hesitant to trade their immediate draft capital, get more for 2027 when you might be talking about needing to draft a quarterback depending on how things play out. But I still think that they have a good enough core on defense with Greenard in there that can you work something out? But normally, by the time it reaches Adam Schefter's tweet, they are taking the blowhorn and putting it out there to everybody. We want to trade Jonathan Greenard. And that is quite a surprise and would really put the onus onto Dallas Turner. Okay, prove that big step you took was a really big step. But man, even Van Ginkel last year dealt with some serious injury issues. I mean, he had the problems with the neck, and he came back against Cincinnati, and then he had to, after that, go back on the injury. It wasn't IR, but then it was injured again and missed a few games, and then came back and played very well. But I mean, there's issues there with Van Ginkel and his history of injuries. So you would be almost forced to consider drafting someone at the edge rusher position, whether that's even in the first round. I mean, that changes kind of everything. maybe the second round that, it really does, because that spot is so enormous that you would have to think about that even at number 18. And I have not been really considering that position at all with the 18th overall pick. So now that's in play. But I don't think that it's the craziest idea I've ever heard. Just it really shows that they are shifting what their mentality is in comparison to, years past. So, it feels like much more of a, competitive rebuild type of thing. And I did not think that that was how the Vikings were going to approach this offseason. So love to get your guys' thoughts on if the Vikings were to trade Jonathan Greenard. I think in the long term, it does fit. It does fit to get another draft pick, move on from some salary, create some space for the future. Don't put as much cash. See, the cash thing is really important here because, rightfully, I think people touted the amount that the Wilfs spent last year. Like, hey, this ownership is A+. They get A+ from the players. They love the way that the Wilfs run their franchise, and you should appreciate the fact that they were willing to spend all the money that they spent. But at the same time, if I'm sitting in Mark Wilf's seat, I'm probably saying myself, hey guys, we gave you all the money in the world last year. Let's tighten the purse strings. Let's pull it back a little bit. You guys got your chance with this money. Now, let's be a little more rational here about the way that we approach the offseason. So now you're talking about, can you split the difference? If you trade Jonathan Greenard, can you split the difference between being a competitive team with the core that you have, finding this young group that you're trying to bring in this offseason, getting a few shrewd moves in free agency, and still making a case for yourself in the NFC North and still making the playoffs? Here's another thing to me that this says, the fact that they're considering trading Jonathan Greenard, is that the idea that Kevin O'Connell was suddenly taking over the reins of the franchise, which is what I thought, and I think what everybody else probably thought, which was like, hey, this is now, Kevin O'Connell's team and he's going to be calling all the shots and everything else. I don't think that's true. I think that Rob Brzezinski, while he is the acting GM and has not been named the official GM, and maybe he never will be named the official GM, and maybe he'll just run this offseason, it is pretty clear, if you're considering trading a player of the caliber of Jonathan Greenard, that the Wilfs have their marching orders for Rob Brzezinski, and he's going to execute them. And Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, go figure it out. Go figure it out. Go find the next Jonathan Greenard. Go find somebody in the draft. Go find some of your players that are underappreciated, underrated, like they did with Eric Wilson and Isaiah Rodgers next year. But you're not going to get this, hey, Kevin O'Connell, I'm going to save my job by doing a whole bunch of crazy stuff, trading your first round pick or trading up 10 spots or, selling out the salary cap for the future. It does not sound like they are doing that. And for the long term of the Minnesota Vikings, who will continue to be a franchise after this season, this is the right thing. It is. Now, I don't want to see Jonathan Greenard gone. He's a great guy in the locker room to talk to, and he's a great player to watch play football, and it certainly helps them have a chance to have their defense lead the way to get to wherever in the playoffs. So for the short term, you don't want to see something like that. But also, if you've decided as a franchise that you've run it to the end of the road with this group, and now you have to start considering how you're going to shuffle pieces in and out, kind of like they did in 2023. They ran to the end of a group in 2022, and even in 23, they were 4-4 when Kirk got hurt. And I have no doubts that they would have, finished with 10 wins that season based on how close those games were with Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs, that if Kirk had continued playing, they would have made the playoffs still. They have enough to still make the playoffs and be a competitive team. But I think trading Greenard would be sending flares into the sky that this is a different approach now from Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's plan, which was chips to the middle of the table for 25 and 26, which is, I mean, that's very interesting and I think very telling. But sort of bottom line is, if they cannot get a first round draft pick or at worst a second round draft pick, then I think you got to play it out with Jonathan Greenard, even if he's not happy. And you saw Breer say that they're comfortable with the numbers, but he wants to have a market correcting deal because the salary cap has gone up several times now and the prices for edge rushers have gone up several times, and they just really don't want to do that. So they would rather, make a trade than decide to invest a lot more. And again, that's a shift because in recent years, they've kind of, made sure that everybody got everything they wanted. Byron Murphy last year got a huge contract. Aaron Jones got a contract that was way bigger than he probably should have compared to what happened in free agency with the running back position. And they've decided that the line in the sand is now being drawn. You're not going to do it this way. But, I do agree with, the idea from some folks of, hey, like, this is a guy who could be here through this, right? Not just with Jonathan Greenard, because he's not old and he doesn't have a bad injury history. It was oblique last year. It was something that he probably could have kept playing through had they ended up making the playoffs. So there is an argument for, like, look, I get you want to spend less and I get you don't want to give him a new contract, but at the same time, like, this guy could be good until he's 33 or 34 years old based on the work ethic, based on he's got some injuries in the past, but it's not a super serious injury history that you would point to and say it's majorly problematic. But, you look at the draft, you look at the strengths of the draft, and I do wonder if coming out of the combine, that was something that was influential here. Like, yeah, this is a deep draft for that position. And if we can create cap space that way, and also this is like, the cap is real. The cap is real and you have to deal with it. And the Vikings are maybe looking at some creative ways that we didn't expect to deal with it. All right. So but if you got thoughts on that, feel free, jump in the comments. We'll talk about those shortly, but there's more to discuss here. And that is Kyler Murray. And there has been a lot of conversation on this here show over the last, maybe 4 weeks about Kyler Murray and his availability. And today it has happened. The Arizona Cardinals, this is from Ian Rappaport, have informed Kyler Murray that they are releasing him and making him a free agent. He is due $36 million guaranteed, but that will come from the Arizona Cardinals, meaning he will play this year on the league minimum. This is something that cannot be emphasized enough when it comes to Kyler Murray and the Minnesota Vikings and why it makes complete sense. We just talked about the fact that they are in such cap hell and that the owners, I think, made it clear through Rob Brzezinski at the combine that they don't want to restructure every single deal. They don't want to push every single dollar down the road, because when you do restructures, it usually means the owners have to write the check in cash that day. So, all right, we're doing the restructure, but they have to, here's the check to shift that money into the player's pocket. Like, they don't love doing that. And they've already done so much of that in the recent past. So if you're looking for a cost-effective deal, Kyler Murray is going to cost the league minimum, which is $1.3 million. That is it for Kyler Murray. And I was doing even a little more research on Murray today. I wrote the article, and I've heard all of the criticisms of Kyler Murray. And my thing is, like, some of them are a little silly. Some of them are not wrong, but also, who is going to be available that is a perfect top 5 quarterback for the Vikings? And the answer is nobody. But I found this interesting. Let me pull this up, that league executives in Mike Sando's piece each year, the quarterback tiers. So I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but I looked up the exact numbers on Kyler Murray. And what I found really interesting is that in those quarterback tiers, so I looked at 2021 through 2025, which would be reacting to the previous season, right? And what Mike Sando of The Athletic does is he goes out and he talks to, this is a guy who's been around for a really, really long time, talks to executives and coaches and has them rank all the quarterbacks into different tiers. Are you a first tier Josh Allen quarterback? Are you a second tier, I don't know, Jared Goff? Are you a third tier? And this is where Kyler Murray has often landed. Kirk Cousins would land in the third tier a lot of times. And here were the numbers from 2021 to 2025 of where he ranked each season by coaches and executives. So this isn't PFF data. This isn't box score stuff. This is the opinion of people inside the NFL year by year. Here's his ranks. 12th, and starting in 2021, reacting to the 2020 season. 12th, 13th, 13th, 17th, and then 15th headed into this year, which was, of course, a lost season for Kyler Murray. He got injured, and then they decided that they were going to tank and play Jacoby Brissett. And I think right there, when you start to go dollars for donuts, just put everything else aside, put just the, does he play video games or whatever, that sort of thing. Put all of that aside when it comes to the innuendo that's out there about Kyler Murray. And by the way, I tried, and you can try too, to use Google, our powerful Google engine, and find in 2024, when he played for Drew Petzing and Jonathan Gannon, so the most recent example, I tried to find any issues between those guys and could not find anything. And I was told by someone in the know, not with the Vikings, but someone in the know, that the relationship there between Gannon and Kyler was good in 2024. And that Gannon wanted to continue to play Kyler Murray, but the organization rightfully went to the bottom, and that was why they played Jacoby Brissett the rest of the time. So that relationship between Petzing, I did find quotes of the talking about Murray, talking about the trust between he and Jonathan Gannon, and he and Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator. That relationship seemed fine. So maybe it was early in his career. Maybe it was Cliff Kingsbury, and also his production in his best years in 2020 and 2021 were pretty good. And there's also something that's kind of crazy to me about Murray, which is, remember with seeing ghosts with Sam Darnold. Seeing ghosts happen at what age for Sam Darnold? 21, I believe. And it stuck with him. He was a grown man when he arrived with the Minnesota Vikings at like 27 years old. And people are still saying, oh, the guy saw ghosts. I mean, couldn't this also be the case with Kyler Murray? That as a younger player, maybe did not know necessarily entirely how to prepare, maybe did take his gifts physically for granted. And then, like, this is a long time now separated from that discussion that happened also as the team took, I think, a risky leap of faith with him in signing him to a big contract that clearly they were trying to cover themselves if it didn't work out. And that regime got blown out anyway. So I'm just making the point that these things that get said can stick for a long time, even if they have not been true anymore. And I saw Josh Weinfuss of ESPN, who is actually from Minnesota. I'll try to get him on the show if the Vikings get Murray, because he's covered Murray's entire career there in Arizona. He tweeted that everyone he talked to called Kyler Murray a competitor. And that's what I've heard as well. What I have also heard about Murray is that he's not vocal. He's not going to be a rah-rah type of guy. He's not going to be the guy that gives the big locker room speech and things like that. But that shouldn't be mistaken for his competitiveness. And I was thinking about this today and how some of the narrative just doesn't match up with Kyler Murray. He's lazy. He doesn't care. He doesn't put in the work. Okay, all right. We're talking about a guy who is 5'10"-ish, one of the smallest players in the entire NFL, actually in history, to ever play this position, who was as dominant of a high school quarterback who has ever existed, who was a good enough college quarterback to be drafted number 1 overall, and good enough to come into the NFL and become what NFL executives thought was a top 12, 13 quarterback early in his career, and most recently a top 15 quarterback. The idea that he's just not doing anything and is just showing up to the stadium or whatever is kind of silly to me, considering the success that he's had. Now, that doesn't mean that, he's somebody that spits glass or whatever. But I mean, I think that might be a little overblown. And I even saw in one of the Sando articles, a general manager say, well, his dedication is questionable because he fades at the end of the season. And when I looked this up, what do you think I found? His games at the end had the same quarterback rating in the final 4 games of the season as they did in the first 4 games, but his teams did not have as much success. And when you look at their defenses, when you look at their supporting casts, they haven't been that impressive. So the point is, when Kevin O'Connell got here, Kirk Cousins' reputation was he's a bad leader. He just works here, right? That was what was said about Kirk Cousins. That changed in 2022. When Sam Darnold showed up here, everyone said he sees ghosts. This guy can't read a defense. He's just going to melt down eventually and isn't any good. I am certainly willing to leave the door open to this guy will be highly motivated to recreate the narrative of his entire career the way that Sam Darnold did in Minnesota. And if there's any bigger motivator, it's that the next contract for him could be what? $100 million plus if he plays really well in Minnesota. Maybe that's here, maybe it's somewhere else. So that's, in addition to sort of my ranting and raving a bit yesterday on Kyler Murray. To me, though, it is for $1 million, just take away all the narrative stuff and just look at the black and white. Just look at what he's produced. Also, I had the stat. Hold on, I'll get you this. This is another good one. This is a really crazy one. Because I was trying to search for this, I think last night, and then I went and found it. And it's just remarkable to think about that where did I have this? When Kyler played, wait, I've got it somewhere. His record. I had his record when he played and when, I'll get it for you. When anyone else played other than Kyler Murray. And this is the same team and they're bringing in, pro quarterbacks to play. And okay, I got it. Here it is. When Kyler Murray played since 2020, the Cardinals were 33-38, which is a little under 500. When he did not play from 2020 to 2025, they're 5-25. So they won 5 times in 30 games when he didn't play, and he was near 500 when he did play. I mean, is it ridiculous to think that Kyler Murray could come in and play with a good team around him, with a good group of weapons, with an encouraging, positive coach who still got an A from the NFL Players Association, even as his team had a bad season and had a lot of drama and, melted down in some games and things like to have a coach who's going to have his back from day one, to have an offensive setup that has, I think, a good offensive line if it's healthy in front of him. Donovan Jackson, a first-round draft pick. Brian O'Neill's still playing very well. I think Will Fries can play better. Don't know what they're going to do at center, but I mean, that's a pretty good line. The best receiver in the world, assuming Addison comes back, assuming they keep Hawkinson, they can add maybe somebody to that. It's just hard to convince me that couldn't do something for Kyler Murray and be successful and potentially get them into the playoffs, which, by the way, is the FanDuel question of the day. As the Vikings are being named the clear favorite for Kyler Murray, they are plus 700 on FanDuel to win the division. Would that number change for you? Or would you keep them in 4th place even if they got Kyler Murray? And the other thing is, too, that, in comparison to the other players that they could go out and get that are not Kyler Murray, and this moves us on to the next news item, which is Daniel Jones. So today, Daniel Jones was given the transition tag by the Indianapolis Colts, which is $37 million and a little cheaper than the franchise tag. But here, according to Adam Schefter, it gives Daniel Jones the opportunity to sign an offer sheet with another team in Indianapolis. So you can put in an offer, and then Indianapolis can either say, okay, we're going to match that, and that's your contract, or they could say, too rich for our blood. So when you think about the comparison here, Kyler Murray versus Daniel Jones, who does, make a lot of sense for the Vikings, and I think proved that he's a better quarterback than he looked like with the New York Giants. Daniel Jones's worst seasons are way worse than Kyler Murray's worst seasons. And his best seasons are not as good as Kyler Murray's best seasons. And now we're talking about a guy who was once mobile, who has had an ACL tear and an Achilles tear. So the mobility is probably off the table. And the price to get him, when you think about a transition tag that sort of sets the number $37 million as he negotiates with other teams, he's going to want at least more than that guaranteed. So he's going to want at least $40 million guaranteed. What kind of offer could the Minnesota Vikings give Daniel Jones that would be even remotely reasonable and that the Indianapolis Colts would not match? So if they offered him $120 million over 3 seasons, I guess, I mean, what are we talking? You have to push the number up to the point where the Colts go, okay, we're good. I mean, is that the number? And that, like, when you think about, I don't believe that Daniel Jones is a more talented quarterback than Kyler Murray. I think Kyler is one of the 10 most gifted players at that position when you add in 500 yards a year at rushing, right? And the playmaking and so forth. Daniel Jones doesn't really have that at all. And even last year, I mean, think about Jonathan Taylor's having an all-time great season for them. And, you know, he had a lot of success throwing the ball, but started to drift before he got injured and kind of regressed there. I think some of it might have been schedule driven or small sample size. Not that I don't think Jones could start and win for the Vikings. I do. But how could you come up with a contract where Daniel Jones is going to say, yes, I'll sign with the Vikings, and the Colts are going to say, that's too much money, we're not going to match it, because they love Daniel Jones and they feel like they nailed it with him? That's really hard to figure out. So if that's off the table, now if they didn't tag him at all, then this might have been more interesting. Then it might have been, well, can you get him for like, I don't know, what Aaron Rodgers signed for last year? Even then, Kyler Murray costs $1 million. Here's a crazy thing for you. If they retain Bo Richter, he'll make like the same amount of money as Kyler Murray from the Vikings on the salary cap. An RFA, undrafted free agent who plays on special teams and is good at special teams. But that's how much the starting quarterback would cost the Vikings versus somebody like Daniel Jones that now, in order to have any chance to get him, you're going to have to really sell out on the salary cap. Yeah, you're going to have to trade Jonathan Greenard and do like 5 other things to just get him here. And you don't even know if he could start week 1 because of his health situation. That does not add up to me at all, which brings us back to Kyler. So you start, now that the transition tag is done, and you start having this conversation of, all right, so it's Kyler versus whom? Okay, versus Geno Smith. I think it's fair, the people who talk about Geno as an exciting option, but he makes way more mistakes with the football than Kyler Murray. I mean, way more. He gets sacked way more. He throws way more interceptions. He's way older. And I know that in the past he's played some under center, but he hasn't really in the last 2 years. I mean, and he has no rushing ability whatsoever. And you need to keep that in mind, that the rushing ability is not just some small little thing. It's 500 yards extra. It's 5 extra touchdowns. It's, I don't know how many first downs Kyler Murray had rushing in 2024, but I mean, you're talking about 20 or 30 more over a season rushing first downs from your quarterback than you would get from Geno Smith. So yes, he can make every throw in the KOC offense. And yes, he could push the ball downfield, but he can also push it to the other team. I don't know that it would be that different than if Jameis Winston played here. I mean, I think Geno's better than Winston, but in this offense, I would, if you give me the option between Geno Smith runs the KOC offense and gets sacked 55 times and throws 20 interceptions versus they have to make some adjustments for Kyler Murray, I would prefer to take Murray. And a lot of people have said to me, well, you know, he can't throw downfield. And I saw Warren Sharp had some stats on, you know, the downfield passing and so forth. It is true that his success throwing down the field has not been the same as it was early in his career. And I think that would be something to consider and a factor. But Kirk Cousins in 2023 was 39th out of 40 quarterbacks in how often he threw over 20 yards downfield. This offense can exist in a world where you rest on the tight end a lot underneath, where you pump the football to wide receiver 1, but not necessarily throwing bombs down the field. It's much more between 10 and 20 yards, where Murray's success in 2024 was good. You roll him out sometimes after, under center. You try to run successfully. I don't know that Arizona ever had a great run game. 2024, I think they were pretty good with James Connors. You try to run successfully, and it'll be inconsistent. And I included this chart in my article. It was up and down for him. Any year of his career, it's up and down. And the main reason for that is that because of his size, there is going to be times where Kyler Murray has to rely on doing things that are spectacular. And when he does them, they're mind-blowing. It's, holy cow, that's one of the best plays you'll ever see, but it's hard to do that consistently. So can you even, and I think Petzing tried to do this in 2024, can you even some of that out to the point where you're not trying to just aim for big plays? And something that was really fascinating when I dove into Murray is that some years he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league under pressure, and some years he's been one of the worst. And it really depends on, do you have options for him with the pressure, and what does he do once he gets out and starts to scramble? But when you compare these other options, just put Murray at 1 million versus every other option. Let's do it. Malik Willis. I love the Malik Willis idea. 30 million. So $29 more million for someone that you hope becomes as good as Kyler Murray. That's kind of tough, right? Like, isn't the ceiling for Malik Willis Kyler Murray being the 12th best quarterback in the league with a ton of talent, but probably not Josh Allen, right? Like, isn't that kind of the best case scenario for a Malik Willis? All right, well, I don't mind that, but it's a lot more expensive. Geno Smith, we just talked about. Kirk Cousins. Okay, Kirk comes back for 1 year, and then what? I mean, you win, 9 games with Kirk? Just hard to, without any mobility, it's just really hard to see Kirk Cousins getting them anywhere higher or farther than he did before when he was here at his peak and was playing really well. Same thing goes for Aaron Rodgers. What's the real peak on that? Mac Jones, they want the world for Mac Jones to trade for him. Where's the option that makes more sense for a top 15 quarterback in the league's opinion, not just mine, in the league's opinion, top 15 quarterback for $1 million? It seems to me undeniable. And you're going to have to work through some things, and you're going to have to figure some things out with him. But here's the other part, because we have to still mention JJ McCarthy as part of this conversation. In the instance that Kyler Murray signs a 1-year, $1.3 million contract with the Vikings, which is the projection because, Arizona's eating the money. So let's say that's the case. Let's say it's 1 year and $1.3 million. And Kyler Murray comes in and he's okay. They win 9 games. Let's just say he's the 18th best quarterback in the league. It's not quite the same as it was at his peak. And he gets them into the playoff conversation. The last week of the season, they need tiebreakers. Maybe they get in, maybe they don't. And JJ McCarthy is his backup throughout the season. Apparently they want Carson Wentz back, but let's just play it out. JJ McCarthy is then his backup throughout the season, okay? And throughout the year, he's got a chance to develop behind the scenes, to see how Kyler Murray navigates an entire NFL season, because as much as people say, well, he's been injured and stuff like that, he did play 17 games in 2024, so he is capable of playing an entire season. Let's just say that McCarthy is doing all his stuff behind the scenes the exact right way and is growing up and is improving his throwing technique and is showing much better command of the offense behind the scenes, and they're excited about him. You don't have to sign Kyler Murray back and keep him as your long-term quarterback. It could be a 1-year transition, a true bridge, which is what they were trying to do with Sam Darnold, and it just didn't work out because of the meniscus injury for JJ McCarthy. But you could kind of right a wrong, and still it does not preclude JJ McCarthy from becoming the quarterback of the Vikings. Eventually, it would just be a longer route there. And if he were to end up in 2027 starting for the Vikings, I mean, let's just say that you're going to have to do some rebuilding after that. You're going to have to get to the point where you're doing a rebuild kind of thing. And all right, well, then you have McCarthy getting a real chance again with a team where there's not pressure from a 14-win season, and he can show you what he's got. And maybe if you have played this correctly, if you are the Minnesota Vikings and you've played it right, and you've stockpiled draft capital, and you've gotten younger, and you're going into that year, you have draft picks that you can move up and take a quarterback, you might be talking about 2027, a competition between drafted quarterback X and JJ McCarthy, and trying to find your young quarterback still. So there's a world where Kyler is so good, and this exists because the guy has had really good seasons before and is a former number one pick. There's a world where he's so good that you want to sign him to an extension and you want to make him your guy. That world is probably like, let's say if we try to pie chart here, I mean, that's probably like 20% chance of happening, that he's so good and you're so awesome and Jefferson catches 118 balls and you're in the NFC Championship. Okay, well, you're signing Kyler Murray. That's like a 15 or 20% chance. What's more likely is that you have a competitive season where you can make a case as a playoff team, maybe get serious in the postseason, and then open the door still to your quarterback future after that, kind of resetting the franchise from calamity at the quarterback position where they were last year. All of this sounds like the best possible option. Does it sound like the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life at the quarterback position? No, it does not. But there isn't that option. So I think already I've seen a bit of a shift of, now that it's getting more real, from Vikings fans going, well, you got to play the hand that's dealt to you. And with McCarthy, being that he is his age, it just doesn't have to be over. And if the Vikings want to play it look, it could also go this way too. If they feel like it's really over for McCarthy and they don't want to try to further develop him, you could also move him and get a second round or third round draft pick back. And once again, you're starting to stockpile draft capital for the future for when you ultimately may need to trade up to draft a quarterback in 2027. So you can see the wheels turning of a lot of different scenarios where it would make sense for Kyler Murray to be a Minnesota Viking and where that could take you. That I started a pie chart. Let's say there's a 20% chance that he's just really dang good, which I'm taking all day. I know when people were like, oh, Sam Darnold wouldn't have taken us to the Super Bowl. I'll take a chance. I'll take a chance. If you told me that Kyler Murray took the Vikings to the NFC Championship next year, I'd be like, okay. I mean, we've seen crazier stuff happen than that, even from a short quarterback. It's not likely. It's way less than 50%, but I wouldn't count it completely out that he's just awesome. So let's say that's a 20% chance. That makes it easier for me to add it up. What's the chances that he's a one-year solution at a very cheap price and is pretty good and pretty frustrating? Up and down, crazy good games, crazy bad games, and they end up with 9 or 10 wins and get into the playoffs, but don't go much further than that. Well, that's probably like a 50% chance, 40%. Let's go 40. So you got 20%, it's crazy good. 40%, it's pretty good. And then what you have is another 40% where it just doesn't really work. But even in the instance that it doesn't work, you didn't spend any money on it, and then you can turn the ball back to JJ McCarthy. Let's even go down that path. Let's say the Vikings sign Kyler Murray and they start him for the first 10 games of the season and they are 4-6 and he's just mid and he's just not good. Maybe worse than mid. He's kind of toast. He's struggling to throw it down the field and he's getting sacked a lot and it's just not going well. Then you can give the ball to JJ McCarthy and see how far he's come along with a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of work in the offseason, and then continue on with that path that maybe you get to the end of the season and go, actually, he took a huge step forward. Or you get to the end of the season and go, it's just not for us. And might that result in a coaching change and everything else? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think that this regime wants to move on from Kevin O'Connell. I don't think history speaks really well of his chances if they have a terrible season. But as a franchise outcome, because again, the franchise goes on regardless of if it's a coaching change or quarterback change, or if you trade Greenard or whatever, the future will get here. I mean, let's say you go 4-6 with Kyler Murray. It's a real struggle. It's not working out. And you go to McCarthy and he's also bad still. And you go, I don't know, 6-10. Then you know where you are. You know exactly where you are. And I've always thought this from a front office perspective, that there's a lot of value in clarity. That if it is clear to the front office what must be done, that makes things a lot easier in all of sports, I think. If you got to 6-11 for next season because the wheels came off Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy didn't show anything at the end of the year, then you know what you need to do. You need to spin that into the next quarterback in a draft class that's pretty good. And you've already stockpiled some draft capital and you've already gotten your salary cap, so it's not insanely bad and you're in the right direction, and then you try it again. And there's also a universe where McCarthy in year 3 plays half the season, plays very well. And then you're going into 2027 saying, let's take a shot at doing this again with JJ McCarthy. And this is the guy that we thought we were going to get when we drafted him. That's not, in this scenario, that's not that crazy either, because McCarthy did show flashes, and we have seen other quarterbacks at times go through a development phase and come out on the other side. Whoo, guys, there's a lot. Oh, one more note I wanted to get to. This was very shocking today. Drew Dalman, the center for the Chicago Bears, retired at the age of 27. And this is a massive game changer because Dalman last year, and I've talked about this a lot in this offseason, how important that center position really is. He was a top-notch center for them. He was a huge signing. He was big in dealing with Caleb Williams and getting Williams on the right page. He was really big in terms of operating their run game. He's one of the best run blockers in the NFL. And I guess injuries have added up on him, and he decided to step away from the game at the age of 27. I am always, by the way, a huge proponent of step away from this game early rather than late. Early might feel like a little empty to you that you didn't have the career you wanted. Late might be something you really regret down the road. And so I fully support Drew Dalman deciding, hey, this is just not working for me physically or emotionally or whatever it might be, and I'm going to walk away from this game. But for the Chicago Bears, from the NFC North perspective, this is huge. And last year we talked about it with Frank Ragnow, and we said, man, losing Ragnow, it's going to make everything different for Detroit. And we talked about it, and still I think I picked them to win the division, and maybe I didn't even give it enough credit either. I thought, well, they've got so much other talent, but it had a mega trickle down effect. And now they're on the hunt. Tyler Biadasz, I think, visited them today. So they're already looking for somebody else, but that is a big, big loss for the Chicago Bears. Okay. Deep breath, sip a Diet Dr. Pepper, and we can get into where you guys stand on this discussion. So I know you guys have been commenting along, and I appreciate that. And there was a super chat that came from Scamping Around. Thank you so much for the super chat. I'll make sure I get to, going back and looking at the comments here in just a second. But man, you talk about the NFL never stops. Holy cow. Just the NFL never stop. That is for sure. Didn't think that I was going to get this big of news coming today with the Jonathan Greenard thing. I'm just very conflicted about it. If the ownership says, we gave you all the money that you needed, it didn't work out for you, now get it right, then that's a player that you might have to move on from, because he's now worth like $40 million on the open market. And if you're not going to give him a new contract that's worth that much, and if you could get a second round draft pick for him and then go into this, if it's this year, go into this draft with a first, 2 seconds, couple of thirds, like that's the reset that they've been looking for with still a very solid core. But we came out of Indy saying, hey, they're not going on a restructure spree. They're not going on a spending spree. So it was shocking to see Greenard's name mentioned. But then when you start to think about it, it's like, well, this actually adds up completely with what Brzezinski said. And I think that Brzezinski was handed down, here's what you're going to do for us now with the team from the Wilfs. And he's executing that. And I think that's a good thing. I think that they needed somebody to kind of rein it in a bit from what they had done last year, which was spending like crazy. But I just thought they would do it for one more year. Let's see. So we'll start with your comments here. Flick says, personally, love the idea of trading Addison and Greenard for draft capital, time to build for the future. I think KOC is a fantastic coach, and JJ McCarthy's writing is already on the wall. The Addison thing is a little bit tricky because he's so cost effective for 2026. But you're right. If you're looking out toward the future, 5th year option, I mean, you start trading Jonathan Greenard and Jordan Addison, and you're looking at a very different ball club all of a sudden. You're going from, hey, we believe that this setup can, make us a Super Bowl contender with decent quarterback play or baseline quarterback play to you're just not a super. If you move on from Addison and Greenard, you are not a Super Bowl contender, which I think for the long term, it makes you closer. Cause we did that needle before. Remember when I said that after they had torn down a lot of pieces and the direction was clear toward drafting a quarterback, I remember saying, this is the closest you've been to a Super Bowl since Case Keenum walked off the field in Philly. And I felt like, okay, winning 14 games was probably the closest there, heading to Glendale. But if we're moving a needle, are you getting closer or farther away? If they made a trade for 2 of their more talented players out for draft capital in, with the idea of drafting a quarterback again in 2027 or seeing if JJ McCarthy turns a corner, that feels closer. It doesn't feel farther away because it doesn't feel like there's, as much as I really like the Kyler Murray idea because of the price tag, and I also think it'll be fun. I think he's an entertaining player. He's an exciting player. His best games are spectacular. I mean, go back and watch that game in 2021 against the Vikings. 400 yards. The guy was a maniac in that game. It was crazy. Like, that'd be really fun. Hard to make a case that you're going to build a roster as strong as Seattle's was or Philly's was with Kyler Murray. Certainly could be in the playoffs, certainly can win games. But, I mean, Super Bowl seems a little far-fetched if you're talking about, having the 15th best quarterback in the league and a roster with some holes in it that you've punched. And yet I would still move the needle in the plus direction because you're doing it in a way that Philadelphia and Seattle have done it with stockpiling draft capital and then keeping the players that they get long-term and drafting a quarterback in 2027. So I think overall it's probably the right thing to do if you think that the franchise, if you're trying to, with a new general manager, maybe it's Rob Brzezinski, lay out a 5-year plan. If you were doing that complete reset, someone just got here, what do they want to do? They would probably say that. They would probably look at this roster and go, we can make the playoffs, but we got to start thinking long-term because if we go down this road, you're going to end up at the bottom for a couple of seasons or in a lot of trouble and maybe minus a Justin Jefferson if you're in that much trouble, which we don't want to be. So that's why it's interesting. That's why you can't just on its face say, oh man, I hate this, that they could move on from Jonathan Greenard. I think you've got to see the bigger picture. And this is coming from Greenard's one of my favorite guys to talk to. I would be very, very disappointed. He is a great, super knowledgeable, highly intelligent, really intense football guy that is a joy to speak with in the locker room. So I would be sad myself, and a great leader, I think, of someone who just brings so much intensity all the time. He's a tough guy to lose, but in a ball game where you're playing with a hard salary cap that keeps proving that it is a real salary cap, when you're playing with very little draft capital. Still, they have more, but it's not like they have a ton. Go do your draft sims. You get 18, then you wait a while, right? So would it be better to have, I don't know, 18, 36? What do they have, 49? Like that's another player. It's hard to give away a guy that good, though. So what was the other thing? Oh, with Addison. Yeah, I mean, with Addison, it would be, again, very much like we're looking toward the future, down the road. We don't want to pay this guy. We're going to get everything we can back for him. And it would be very different. In the immediate, very, very hard to replace someone as good as Jordan Addison. But I've never been of the mind that you can't move on from Addison. The only thing that I was looking at, and my mindset has to change here with Addison, because I didn't think that, I had not even considered moving Jonathan Greenard. So if they move Greenard, why wouldn't you move Addison? Because it's the same story. It's don't want to pay this guy in the future. And I don't know how you can pay him when you can't trust him. That would seem to me a very, very risky to do. And I mean, can you get a second round pick back from Addison? You certainly should be able to. He got thrown out of a casino. He, didn't commit homicide or something. Like he's, like had his issues, but I think other teams looking at his talent and the need for wide receiver would be willing to give up something for, Jordan Addison. Caleb says, everyone says JJ was on an upward trajectory. He didn't even finish the last 5 games and averaged like 180 yards per game. It wasn't that impressive, even at his best. Yeah, look, you also can't just carve out what you like and say, and this is like the Kyler Murray analysis for me. I've presented the facts on Kyler Murray, but also acknowledge the downfield passing doesn't work. The play under pressure is wildly inconsistent. There is certainly a question about how you fit in a locker room. Like there are positives and negatives when it comes to even a really good player like that. And I think with JJ McCarthy, if you just sort of redact everything that you don't like, sure, you could say it was really good here and it was really good there, but that's not how anything works. If you only took the best games of a basketball player, they'd shoot 65% for 3 or whatever. Like, look, I took the best 5-game stretch from a basketball player. He's the best 3-point. He's Jordan. Or he's the best 3-point shooter. He's Curry. You could do that with just about anybody, right? With Kirk, oh my God, if you just took October for Kirk, he's Joe Montana. But that's not how it works. So with McCarthy, it's a bigger sample size that suggests this is not someone who right now is ready to lead a franchise back to the playoffs. Kyler Murray certainly is. And I believe Geno Smith could do it. I think Kirk could probably do it. I think Rodgers could probably do it. But McCarthy, based on his history, would have to really, really take an insane step forward in order to even get to that baseline level. He was not even last year. Like you compare Desmond Ritter's first 10 games to McCarthy, and it's better. Like Desmond Ritter's a QB3 or QB4 bouncing around 3 or 4 different teams in a single year, and his first 10 games are better than McCarthy's. You just can't put your season and the season of Justin Jefferson and all these other players on your team on to someone who played like that. Doesn't mean it can't get there eventually, but like you're saying, in the analysis, you can't just circle the things that you like and then ignore the rest of the stuff. And down the stretch, it was fine. There were other guys in the league, top quarterbacks who were throwing for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns and stuff like that down the stretch. It was fine. It was against some of the worst defenses in the league, and there was improvement at times. I thought he was really good in the Dallas game, but it's only traits, like O'Connell said at the combine, and it's only flashes. It's not anything really substantive that you could say, yes, this is the proof that he can be the guy. But I still like the idea of 1 year, $1.3 million for Murray and give JJ his chance. I loved what they did with Jordan Love in Green Bay. I love what Sam Darnold did going to the 49ers as a backup. I loved what Geno Smith did going to Seattle as a backup. Baker Mayfield, a backup in Los Angeles for a little bit there. These are good ideas for a quarterback to really learn how to play that have had some problems. JD says, our center needs to, and then didn't finish the sentence. You just need a center. How about that? let's see, Don. I'll just go with Don. I think the strategy of going younger actually helps KOC. He probably gets more leeway as a coach of a young developing team than a veteran ready to win now team. Is that true? So they're not going to get to a point this year with this roster where they're a young developing team. They're still going to be, because we go position by position and look at the investment and look at the age. Even Jordan Mason is a veteran running back. You have Jefferson, veteran. I'm assuming. See, now I've been thinking TJ Hawkinson stays, but if you're moving Greenard, they might move. So that might change. I was kind of thinking along the lines of, all right, maybe you're going to move Greenard and the rest of the stuff stays in place. But if Greenard goes, I mean, we could see a 2023 to 2024, or I'm sorry, 2022 to 2023 type of, like, they're moving on a lot of people. I mean, the floodgates might open if Jonathan Greenard goes, because then you're saying, well, if you're not going to keep him, then why keep Hawkinson? Why not just draft Kenyon Sadiq and make him your guy? Why not just draft another edge rusher and make him, a development project next to Dallas Turner? Why not draft, another wide receiver and trade Addison if you're not going to pay him? I mean, there's a lot of that, right? This could get nuts in a way that I did not expect at all. And it might be a younger developing team. I have been of the mind that would be really crazy if they went from oldest team in the league and really in cap hell to suddenly, wow, look at all these young players that they just started building through the draft. I mean, that would be a tectonic shift for the entire franchise. I didn't really even consider that it could get to that point, but it certainly could. I don't think it's going to. I think this is more about a specific player who wants a lot more money. And they're like, we don't have it, dude. We can't give it to you. So we might need to find a resolution. That's more what it feels like. Where O'Connell fits in all of this is very interesting, though, because suddenly Kevin O'Connell looks like, all right, well, he's definitely not calling all the shots with the roster, because if he was, there's no way that they're letting go Jonathan Greenard. But is he being evaluated this year by the Wilfs as, are you going to be our future quarterback or not? That's a question right there. I'm sorry, not quarterback. He can play quarterback better than most humans, but head coach is what I meant to say. Said quarterback so many times over the last few days. Head coach. Are you going to be our head coach long-term and just lock into that? Or are you being evaluated for the future for this year? I think if you're going to go through another transition, it's not a terrible idea to have a coach that players really buy into. And that is clear from the NFLPA survey again, that players really buy into Kevin O'Connell. If that's your approach of, hey, if you go 7-10 this year, we're not going to fire you. We're going to go through this roster transition over the next few years with you as the guy because you set a certain culture, and then we'll decide later. And even trusting him to draft another quarterback. Look, everybody has their misses. And there's been a lot of circumstances that have gone into JJ McCarthy being a miss. His injuries being number one. I don't know that if you took any quarterback, maybe all-time freaks like Cam Newton or something, but any quarterback and took 24 out of their first 34 games away due to injury, if they're looking great right now, it's probably not the case, right? So if you said, hey, bad break, who would have ever guessed that you would have torn the meniscus and then got hurt 4 separate times in year 2, draft another quarterback, rebuild this thing, stay competitive while you're doing it, and we'll give you another shot. I don't think that's a bad idea because I like consistency. I think that just hiring and firing people, taking swings all the time, hey, maybe the next coach is more genius than your current coach, I don't love it. And I only like when a team makes a change when it's gotten real ugly. Like, okay, the players, this guy's lost the locker room. The guy's gone crazy, whatever it might be. But I don't think that's happened to O'Connell. And there's also still time. A lot of your guys' critiques are right about Kevin O'Connell, about, the offense or, not leaning on the run game enough or whatever it might be. Game management, whatever. A lot of it is fair that you guys bring up. But I mean, he's not old. He's not 57 and can't, how old was him? He's not 60 something. And like, this guy will never change or never improve. And I think they've already taken steps this offseason to say we're going to improve in areas that have been kind of rough for us. Caleb says everyone needs playing time. With Turner's emergence, it makes sense. Hopefully get a second for Greenard and some cap savings. I would like to keep him though. I mean, being that he's only 28, that's where it's really hard to move on, because I think those rushers can be good until they're like 33, 34. But the point on Turner, here's another thing about Turner. Gosh, life comes at you fast with rookie contracts, doesn't it? With Dallas Turner, after year 3, you're already starting to talk about, do you give him an extension? Do you decide on the 5th-year option? Like, it happens so quick in the NFL, right? And with Dallas Turner, you got to find out. So last year, I thought the second half of the season was really, really good for Dallas Turner. And it showed a lot of what he can be as a full-time player. If you move Greenard and you put Dallas Turner into a role where he's going to play 700 snaps as the Jonathan Greenard role, which has to be a factor here. Let's say he gets 11 or 12 sacks. Okay, you're exercising the 5th-year option. You're considering a long-term extension. Let's say that he struggles and he just is not really fit for being an every down player, and that's a miss in the draft again. Let's just say. Then you know that you have to replace that position long-term and that he's not going to be really your guy. If you have him rotating in and out and getting, okay, 2 or 3 sacks down the stretch here, but maybe no opportunity, or he's kind of just filling in, you're still not really finding out if what you spent on that player is worth it. And what you spent was a lot. And from that perspective too, this is where, again, the Greenard trade says something about where they're at, but it also feels like a position where Dallas Turner clearly was better, wildly better at being Jonathan Greenard when he was out than he was trying to emulate Andrew Van Ginkel. This is because Andrew Van Ginkel is like 30 and has been around forever and is insanely smart and a rare bird in the NFL. And just saying, hey, go be him is almost impossible for a young player. But hey, line up and rush the passer. That's a little more straightforward. And when Dallas Turner could do that, he was dangerous coming off of the edge. His burst was clearly there. There was an obvious improvement in pass rush moves and I think instincts, and also a major thing was confidence for Dallas Turner. So if you move Jonathan Greenard, you get to find out what you have with Turner, and he can also, potentially take another step forward to being the player that they hoped he could be. If he's blocked by Greenard, you still have to figure out some sort of rotation. Are you going to move Greenard to the other side? Are you going to have Van Ginkel play linebacker? And it's a good problem to have with that much talent, but it also blocks you finding out what you spent all that draft capital for. So when you start to add this up and you go, all right, the options are either pay Jonathan Greenard $40+ million a year, 35, somewhere in that range on a new contract, and give him X number of dollars for 2026 in cash, which again, they've spent a lot of cash and might not want to do that, but that's option number one. At 28 years old, and he has had some injuries, and that's a great player for you, but you're going to be rebuilding and resetting other parts of the roster, so you're really locking yourself into him, or find out everything you want to find out about Dallas Turner as a pure edge rusher, which I think clearly is what he's meant to do in the NFL. Maybe they saw something else coming out, but that's what he's been best at in the NFL, and then find out there, and maybe you've got a star, because he has the potential and he has the talent to be a star at that position. I think I've gone from earlier today, complete surprise. Wow, really? Because my thought was this team is trying to still, go for it. But if all of a sudden we flip our mindset and start thinking, well, what about 2027? What about the long term of this franchise? It starts to make a lot of sense. Jay says, how many of you think that Flores will be the head coach in 2027? I think that Mike Tomlin might be the next GM. I don't know if Mike Tomlin is actually still under contract with the Steelers, I think, for next year. So I don't think he's going to be the next Vikings GM. I think he's going to be Amazon's next broadcaster or something. We'll see on Rob Brzezinski. I would not be surprised. I mean, if Brzezinski guides them through this sort of thing and they come out still feeling like they're in good shape, it would make a lot of sense for him to continue to be the general manager. Plus, trust of the ownership. And where I would be the most impressed with Rob Brzezinski is if he's able to kind of navigate and manage with a coaching staff that clearly wants to win now. Flores came back, O'Connell, the pressure he's under, but navigate them through executing what the ownership wants from the very top and still come out with a good-looking team that is for now and later. I'd be pretty impressed. That's not the easiest thing to do. Palm Tree Yeti says, now everyone in the NFC North needs a center. Isn't that crazy? Centers, dude. I wouldn't be surprised, truly wouldn't, if Blake Brandel's just the guy next year. If that's how hard centers are to find. They can have a competition maybe with him and Michael Juergens, or they could just draft someone in the third round and have Brandel start. Blake Brandel is probably every bit as fit as some of these free agents. If you're not getting Cushenberry, you're not getting Biotish, those guys who are have just become free agents. Luke Fortner's out there, Cade Mays, but there's going to be a lot of, as you said, like there's going to be a lot of competition for those guys. They might have to just stick with the guy in-house. I think that's very possible. Joe says this should light a fire under McCarthy because Murray is young enough to be the Vikings quarterback for a long time. JJ has to know that the time is now and work on his game. Right. And that is to find out in the NFL that the league doesn't wait for you. The franchise doesn't wait for you. They don't sit around and make excuses for you. They need to win and they need to be competitive, and they're not going to sit there and go, oh, well, you know, let's make a bunch of it. And this is why when people do this for McCarthy, it's like the team is not doing this. The team is not making 50 million excuses and saying, well, if you only look at this one game that he played against Dallas, then you see a lot of great stuff. It's like, that's not how anything works in any sport. Every team is thinking about what's the best thing for our entire franchise. And with McCarthy, maybe the cold splash of water of reality of the NFL inspires. And that's why it's a make or break, right? It is a make or break type situation where you either are going to show everything you've got that made you a first round draft pick, if you're McCarthy, and you're going to take those coaching points and you are going to run through a brick wall for Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown and do every single thing that they said. And you are going to lock in to that offense, and you are going to be the best practice quarterback that you can be behind Kyler Murray, and you're going to support Kyler every single week. You know, this is if Kyler happens, and grow and develop and get better and do what Malik Willis did. This is what I'm describing is exactly what Malik Willis did for Jordan Love and the Packers the last couple years. If you could do that, then you have a real chance of still succeeding. And if you can't, then you are in tough. And there's a lot of guys who couldn't do it. There's a lot of guys who couldn't be somebody's backup, and they just end up out of the league. Phenom says, I don't want to see Greenard leave, but if we get good return and cap relief, then I'm in. It has to go along with good return. But seeing all the different teams, and this is a point that Jeremiah Searles made earlier on the show that I thought was very interesting. If you didn't hear that conversation, of course, we recorded right before the news broke, but still a really fun conversation. And what he pointed out was that there are some teams in the NFL that are below what they need to be for cash spending because the NFL sets a floor. This is how much cash you have to spend as a franchise over 3 years. It's a 3-year period. And Dallas is below it, and Buffalo is below it. And there are probably other teams that are in that bucket too. But if you're Dallas, are you going to try to replace, Micah Parsons with a Jonathan Greenard for a second round draft pick? I mean, I don't think that's crazy. You could make it a second and a conditional fourth or something. And if he makes the Pro Bowl, it becomes a third, something like that. I also think that we have seen at times teams trade a first round pick 2 years out, which is something that Dallas could consider doing, of trading 2 years out. I mean, would you take a 2027 first? I mean, I would. That's way down the road, and it feels kind of sad at the time, like, he didn't get anything back for him right now. But I mean, that's a first round pick down the road that you're going to be pretty damn happy about. And this was my argument last year for making the trade with Atlanta to let them move up to take James Pierce was, I know right now you're happy to have that player, but man, if things go wrong for Atlanta, you are in heaven, which the Rams kind of are because they did that. Jay says, will Jefferson approve of Murray as a starting quarterback in 2026? If not, he'll want a trade in 2027. I cannot speak for Justin Jefferson and his thoughts because I think if you are just using the fact that he is an incredible competitor and he wants to win and he wants to break records and he wants to be an NFL icon, all-time player, not just pretty good, then the answer would be yes. If it doesn't work out at the quarterback position by 2027, then yeah, I mean, he's looking for where can I go that someone's going to be able to throw me the dang football. Would he approve of Kyler Murray? I look back at, because I've seen some Arizona Cardinals fans saying, well, Murray wouldn't throw the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. But I looked at Marvin Harrison Jr.'s stats last year, and it was nothing special when Jacoby Brissett was playing. I think that maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. got overhyped and overdrafted and is a talented wide receiver, but is not the generational talent, which of course should never be used. That's the good thing about draft analysts thinking this draft isn't special is I don't have to listen to generational talent talk because it's rarely correct that someone is a generational talent. I mean, I think we even heard that from like Ashton Genty last year, and he might still be very, very good, but like, okay, he's a good prospect, but he was not Justin Jefferson. I don't think he was Malik Neighbors. He didn't immediately come in and become Justin Jefferson. Jefferson was not a generational prospect. That's also the funny thing, right? He is a generational receiver, but not a generational prospect. Anyway, not the point. I think Harrison is just okay. I think DeAndre Hopkins was truly elite. And when he had truly elite DeAndre Hopkins, he threw him the ball a ton and his quarterback rating was 109.3. That's what Justin Jefferson would be looking for in Kyler Murray. And Jefferson, it's very simple. He wants this is from listening to him talk for years now. Every Thursday, we stand 5 feet away from Justin Jefferson. We have our little scrum and we talk to him and everything else. And in training camp, he's a very open guy about the things that he wants. He wants, and he's so focused on this, and I think it's why he's a great player. He wants to win, and he wants to put up numbers that rival anyone in history. And of course he does, because that's what he did over the first 5 years of his career. He had the best start to a career ever. So that's what he wants. And if Kyler Murray's the guy, I don't think he cares who's throwing it. That's what he wants. And he knows too, that those two things are connected. The success in winning, getting him the football, those two things are connected. Randall says, trade JJ for Richardson straight up, and KOC has his new love. This is the funny part, right? Is that the conversation about like the quarterback position after today, it almost seemed like Kyler's going to the Vikings. That's been the vibe from the insiders and from what everyone's been talking about after this happens, which is weird because we knew this was going to happen. We knew he was going to get released this entire time based on the circumstance that no one was trading for that contract. And yet today it feels like all of a sudden everyone's decided, okay, he's going to the Vikings. There's no guarantees that that's actually happening, but that other mutual interest element, this is something we've seen from them before. Going out and getting Daniel Jones just to be the third string quarterback for a while. I mean, kind of bold, right? To do. And I thought it was odd at the time. And I remember not liking it. And I mean, maybe I was wrong, but well, sort of, it just made no difference at all. But I thought, why bring another quarterback into the room when you're in a great position? If there's anybody who could have Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, I mean, what a collection. What a collection. And JJ McCarthy, three guys that, and then, Carson Wentz, another guy who had things in his past where people said he wasn't a good teammate or whatever. And here's poor Max Brosmer like, hey, remember Max Brosmer? Who I think could still develop. It's really unfair for Max Brosmer to have to play last year, but what a quarterback room that would be. When they said casting a wide net, I mean, it sounds like they were right, but would you hate it? I mean, this is a position where we're always saying that what should they do? They should, teams who don't have one, they should draft one every year, right? They should take every shot that they possibly can. Well, having seen some other quarterbacks in the league, namely Sam Darnold, suddenly take a huge step forward, why not? If your quarterback room is a number 1 overall pick, a number 4 overall pick, right? Richardson, and then a number 10 overall draft pick, and whatever Carson Wentz was, I mean, hey, that's a lot of talent. At very least, that's a lot of talent. Joe says the only choice that could possibly be better on the field would be Willis, but it was Price. Right. Yeah. And look, Willis is an exciting player, and I think he's going to be good. He's mature and he's prepared and he's got a strong arm and he's got phenomenal mobility, and there's no real mileage on the body of Malik Willis. Got a little banged up in the game he played. I think it was a shoulder injury, but he hasn't played a lot. So it's not like he's got 15 different surgeries or something. There's not a lot of scar tissue on the guy. It's not like, I mean, man, every person that I talked to, I was talking to Aaron Nagler, Cheesehead TV, and everybody that I talked to about Malik Willis just loves the guy. I mean, just was so impressed by him and the way that he carried himself and the way that he played in those games. But you said it. At what price? I mean, $1 million for Kyler Murray or $30 for Malik Willis. Now, here is the difference. If you are totally done with JJ McCarthy and you're thinking, 1 year of Kyler Murray, does it really make sense? We're looking for a multi-year quarterback to guide us through these next couple of years that could be a little bit of a transition. That's where you might consider something like that. If you were looking at, all right, we're looking to find our franchise quarterback still, not just a Band-Aid. Murray is young enough where that could be the case. It just seems a little less likely than if you're getting someone who's young and you get to continue to develop them and grow with them. But again, it's a lot of money that they don't have. I mean, if you're lopping off a huge chunk of your team in Jonathan Greenard because of money, then it doesn't feel like you could pay someone $30 million a year. Palm Tree Yeti, Josh Rosen fetched a second, right? Which is nuts in retrospect. It is. Guess who else got a second? Sam Darnold from the Carolina Panthers. I don't think that a team would do it right now, but I mean, if you're the New York Jets, just for example, and you get left out of this party, or even how about the Cleveland Browns? Oh my goodness, is that team in trouble? The Cleveland Browns, like I saw the Browns, their media, and no disrespect, because they have to talk about all their options. And they're talking about, well, would we want Kyler? I'm like, what? Kyler's not coming to your team. Like, no one's going there. They're talking about Malik Willis. He'd be insane. Any person would be absolutely out of their skull to go to the Cleveland Browns. So if you're them, would you give a second round draft pick for JJ McCarthy? That's if the Vikings are really done with him. And if they were thinking Kyler Murray's a multi-year option and they definitely want to draft someone. Jay says if Kyler does well at 1.3 over 1 year, then we would have to break the bank for him in 2027. So then we'll let him walk for more money in 2027. Yeah. Or look, this is part of getting your cap right. Let's play it out. Let's say Murray's terrific and let's just say you love him. I don't know. People are a lot different when they're 22 in a first overall draft pick than 28. It's a huge difference. Every once in a while, I see something come up on social media about the frontal lobe. Like there was a player, who was it? Diego Pavia, who said something like, yeah, my frontal lobe is not fully developed yet or something at age 24. There is a maturing that happens to a human being from the early ages of 20 until the late 20s, a pretty huge maturing. So if that is the case, let's say for Kyler Murray, that they like him and they're on the same page with him and he plays great. Let's say he throws for 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, 8 picks, let's just say, and 500 yards, and they win a playoff game and they lose in the divisional round by a field goal. There's no way you can let that guy walk. But if you have reset your salary cap in the right way and you've stockpiled draft capital, there are teams who have built around mid-contract quarterbacks, i.e. the Seattle Seahawks, if they have stockpiled draft capital and if they have managed their salary cap well. So it's not impossible. And you still would not be talking about a guy making $70 million after a season like that when he was on that 1-year contract. So that door is open. PM Nagel, I'd rather know for sure about JJ McCarthy before the 2027 draft class. I totally get that. And I understand where people are coming from when they're saying, well, I want to find out about JJ McCarthy. The problem is that you're 2 years into JJ McCarthy and you kind of have found out a lot about McCarthy. I think the mystery is not really there when you look at the odds and you look at how other quarterbacks have performed in this sort of time frame. It's not like the guy hasn't played. When someone hasn't played at all, then it's, hey, let me find out. And that was part of the value of last year. There wasn't much to talk about for the value of last year, but a little bit of the value is you did find out. You found out he was not ready to be a starting quarterback. You found out you needed a new starter in 2026. You found out that he wasn't able to stay healthy even through an entire season. That's a lot of information that you already have on JJ McCarthy. And I actually think that you'll find out just as much, if not more, of him being a backup quarterback than you will if he starts. Because then, and this is the Malik Willis point, right? Like Malik Willis took it very seriously being the backup quarterback and was very prepared and very professional and learned a lot and improved a ton over when he first played. There is so much evidence that you can improve on the bench. There's so much evidence of that. So many quarterbacks. I think that is just as telling or even better. TM, you want a quarterback that can stay healthy and get Jefferson the ball. That is not Murray. Well, Murray played 17 games in 2024. So I don't know if calling him injury prone is fair. I mean, he did have an ACL tear, and that was in the late part of one season and then hurt him coming back in the other season. That's really the only major injury, but it spread to 2 seasons. And then he played the whole year in 2020 and 2021. I don't know what, I mean, last year, his injury was not that big of a deal. Go look at it. Go look at the reports and everything. They were ready to bring him back, and they just decided we're going to tank and then get rid of Murray. That was their plan. It was not, he could have played probably 12 or 13 games last year. But they decided to just go with Brissett and go to the bottom and go 1-11 with Brissett. That was kind of the funny thing where there were people saying, well, Brissett's playing better than Murray did. Okay. But when it comes to getting Jefferson the ball, I don't know what you mean. I mean, when he had DeAndre Hopkins, he threw him the ball nonstop. So David said, this is starting to sound like I have Vegas bets on the other side of Kyler Murray to the Vikings. I can tell you for 1,000% certainty, I have no bets on anything, actually. So, but we do have a FanDuel question of the day, which was, why not, right? If you're talking about the bets that you make. Oh, no, actually, that's wrong. I have a milkshake bet with Jeremiah Searles. Yep. I have a milkshake bet with Jeremiah Searles, and I think I'm going to win it. That someone else will be the starting quarterback in 2026 other than McCarthy. That is our milkshake bet. But the FanDuel question of the day was that the Vikings are plus 700 to win the NFC North. If they get Kyler Murray, where would you put them? Would you put them first, second, third, or fourth in the division if that was the case? Palm Tree Yeti said, why wouldn't we sign Murray to a 2-year contract after the Darnold incident? Because Murray's not going to sign a multi-year contract. That would be why. Kyler Murray is going to sign a 1-year contract that that he would hope and his side would hope that would turn him into a $100 million quarterback. He's already getting the cash. So why would you sign a 2-year deal? You see what I'm saying? If you sign a 1-year deal and you're already getting the cash from Arizona, then you can play well and go somewhere else or stay in Minnesota and get $100 million more. Why would you sign a 2-year deal worth like 30 or something, which is probably his price? See what I mean? Aaron says, do the Vikings just want to see if they can get someone to overpay for Greenard? I personally wouldn't trade him. I would extend him. And that's fair too. He's a very, very good player. He's still 100% in his prime. I think that the way the guy plays, his work ethic, how he wins, which is a lot with technique and not just pure get off, I think he could be good till he's 33 or 34 years old. So it might just be a classic, hey, let's see if anyone goes nuts. But Jeremy Fowler did put it out there that they're looking for a second round pick, or he said day 2, which makes me think that it's more serious of a truly, we will do this if you are going to stick with it and want to get a contract extension, because we just don't have the cash in order to do that. Jay says, you're very optimistic about Murray. Say something that would be a red flag if we get Murray. I have covered a lot of these different things about Murray and his imperfections. The reason that I am, I guess I would say, optimistic about Murray is because the evidence points you to that direction. As I said, I mean, whether you can pull it from any bucket you like. I mean, if you look at some of the data from Pro Football Reference and their approximate value is a good way to look at it. And it speaks to my argument too, that I don't think anyone's actually watched Kyler Murray play very much football at all, or tracked his career really, because he's in the most, or one of the most irrelevant markets there is in the entire NFL, in Arizona. So if you look at approximate value from Pro Football Reference, 2020 to 2024, he was the 8th most valuable quarterback in the NFL, because running is value. This is what we leave out of that discussion all the time. It's like, well, his passing stats are maybe the 20th best in the league, but his rushing is top 5. So that's a big difference maker right there. So I think that like people haven't really looked closely into it. So I've tried to inform why would your team be doing this is really the goal. It looks like your team, the Vikings, are really seriously considering it. Why would they be? And then you look at what executives have said on the plus side for Murray. He's consistently in their rankings, a top 15 quarterback, the price tag. So do I sound optimistic? No, I mean, I'm just laying out why your team would do this. I don't think it's optimistic or pessimistic. The negative side of Kyler Murray, I think, is pretty clear. And I don't know if I've needed to present that, since it gets, a flood of every single comment for the last month is all the negatives about Kyler Murray. You would certainly wonder about how he's going to fit with the locker room. You would certainly wonder how he fits with the offense. And, people have said he can't throw to the middle of the field. It's just not true. But getting him to do it at a higher rate would be an issue. He went 30 for 41 throwing over the middle of the field with 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and it was his highest PFF grade in 2024 of anywhere he threw the football. So he will throw it over the middle, but he didn't do it at the same rate as Sam Darnold. Like, can you get him to do it more? Pushing the ball 20 plus yards down the field has not been successful for him in years. It's a concern. Does he have the power throwing the ball post ACL injury, which seems to be where there's a demarcation line there? And even though he's been very accurate, has an extremely high completion percentage, 6th best in the league from 2020 to 2024. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Got to reset the mic. Every once in a while with this thing. I don't know what its deal is. Anyway, so his ability, the mic was not accepting any negativity for Kyler Murray. Pushing the ball down the field has been a major problem. And it's made me wonder about, driving from the force from the ground is how you create your power throwing the football. And is it the same after he had the injury and he's, had the foot issue last year, and maybe that hurt him a little bit throwing the football down the field? It's a problem. And the reason his completion percentage and accuracy, he is a very accurate quarterback, but one of the reasons that his accuracy is so high is because he often throws a lot of short passes, and he's not one of the highest in the league all the time at pushing the ball down the field. So that is a concern. Certainly, there have been some injuries. That's a concern. There's going to be red flags on anybody you get. And it's all relative through, if you gave me a choice of every quarterback in the NFL and who I would put on the Vikings right now, all quarterback draft. So, all right, you can pick from anybody. Murray probably shows up at 14th, 15th, something like that. But unfortunately for the Minnesota Vikings, when you look at all the quarterbacks in the NFL who's available, that's the best one. There isn't a top 10 quarterback, but it can get you to a point of remaining competitive, maximizing what you have on the roster now. It can get you to a point where you're drafting a quarterback and aiming higher. But you've got to stockpile draft capital, and you've got to reset your cap, and you got to be in a good spot when you're going to do that in 2027, or JJ McCarthy has to have it work out. Nasaj, are there still people saying we don't know about JJ? We know he missed a ton of games, needs to mature, and is terribly inaccurate. We know a lot about where he's at least for now. There's no lies told in your comment. There's a lot of information on JJ McCarthy. He was in over his head being asked to be a franchise quarterback. He was in over his head with an NFL offense, and his just pure throwing technique was extremely erratic. And there were moments where you did wonder about the coachability. And that is way too much to add up to say, oh yeah, we don't know anything about him, as if he's just brand new. No, once you drive the car off the lot, it starts to often reduce in value. And unfortunately for McCarthy, that's been the case. It doesn't mean his career has to be over. And maybe there's an argument for the folks who want to find out of what if you just rolled with McCarthy to see if you're going to do things like trade Greenard, if you're going to do things like try to get your cap right and move, I don't know, Jordan Addison. If you're more in a building mode, then why wouldn't you see how many games you could get out of JJ McCarthy? I don't think that argument's insane. I don't think it's what you can do right now with the amount of talent that's still here, even if you move Jonathan Greenard. But I don't think that that's an insane take. I think it's a fair take, but that's why it seems that their view of JJ McCarthy is low enough to the point where they just don't believe he could go out there and get them to that spot at this point in his career. Doomer KO says it would move from plus 700 on FanDuel to plus 670. Okay. DLM, Nuke, Hopkins, and Jefferson have a similar style. Okay. I think that's true. That Jefferson's faster and is a little more down the field than DeAndre Hopkins, who was, I thought, like the best of the best possession wide receiver. Crazy, crazy hands, but similar enough. And he's going to be able to get him the football. Mama says if we drafted Ty Simpson, he didn't actually have, or he did actually have a good combine, or didn't he have a good combine? I watched him throw, and his throwing and footwork were impressive. He's barely played, and he's 6'1", and he's not the greatest athlete. And I don't know. 3rd round pick, I would do it, but it's probably going to take a more investment than that. And according to somebody, I forget which insider said this, that Ty Simpson has been told that he's probably a 1st round draft pick. I just don't really see it. And I think that he needs a lot more work. I didn't really see it in college. I mean, 3rd round shot, I guess, but even then that's very Kellen Mondish, and I don't love that. Randall, ESPN had a stat that Murray in 87 games has 20,000 passing yards and 3,000 rushing yards. The only 2 other players that have done that are Josh Allen and Cam Newton. That's right. This is a good quarterback. It's not a perfect quarterback. It's not a legendary quarterback, but he's good. He has done a lot of good stuff. And I would just throw this out there. If you're of the mind where you're thinking, how can I get to that point where you're excited about Minnesota Vikings 2026 football? Go back and watch his game, or even just the highlights, against the Los Angeles Rams 2024. Cardinals Rams 2024. He has 6 big time throws in the game, and I think a perfect passer rating. The high end of Kyler Murray is insane. The high end of him is an elite quarterback. It just is inconsistent. And can you smooth some of that out? I think Arizona tried. They didn't really have the horses. Maybe the Vikings can. Joe says we should take a late flyer on Talon Green, maybe as a UFA. He'd be fun to see in practice. He left Richardson's numbers at the combine in the dust. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, the workout that he had. I'm not sure that that's an NFL quarterback. Kind of reminds me of Joe Milton, where it was, hey, this guy's insane as a freak. We should just take him. But the odds that he's actually a real NFL quarterback are not high. The thing about Anthony Richardson is that people, very credible people in the NFL, including Kevin O'Connell, looked at Anthony Richardson's skill set and the way he throws the ball down the field. We're talking the intermediate, we're talking deep, is actually phenomenal. It's a lot of the details, the short stuff, I mean, the execution, the timeliness of it, and the running ability of Anthony Richardson, his size, his strength, his power is basically Cam Newton level. And Newton had his issues with throwing the ball too. I think a lot of people looked at him and saw, like, this guy is Cam Newton. So if he can come in, and he really did, this is the trouble with the NFL and trying to play guys, and this goes for JJ McCarthy too. For the record, I thought that, it was a lot to ask JJ McCarthy. I believe I use that phrase a lot. It's a lot to ask JJ McCarthy to take over a 14-win franchise. I believe we asked him that. Do you think it's a lot to ask to take over a 14-win franchise? Because the NFL throws things at you that college could never present. And with Anthony Richardson, his maturity and his toughness and his competitiveness, are just really, really high end coming out of college. You watch the Georgia game where Richardson gets hurt early in the game, gets banged up, does not leave the game, and can't really run. He's kind of hobbling and just fights the rest of the game. And they stay in it and they almost have a chance to win. And you're like, this guy, what a warrior. But you go into the NFL and it's just a different story. And they botched that really badly with Anthony Richardson. And I think when you look at the Vikings, they botched it too, putting JJ McCarthy in that position when he wasn't ready for it. And they did it with Richardson. What ultimately happens is you get the guy in and he's so wildly physically impressive that you're like, we got to start this guy. We can't start Gardner Minshew. Or in McCarthy's case, 2024 camp, gosh, he's showing us everything that we wanted from our quarterback that we drafted. We're just going to move on from Darnold and go to him. But it's about the stuff you can't anticipate. And I always compare this to taking a trip where you try to plan every detail, but what happens? Your flight gets delayed. You miss your connection. How about last year in Chicago, Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune, he had a hotel room booked, and I forget exactly what the situation was, showed up and they didn't have a room for him and it was sold out. And he ended up just going straight to the airport after Monday Night Football. Trips, you can't predict them. I think it's the same way with trying to predict guys who haven't played in the NFL. You just can't predict all the things that could happen in the course of a season. It's just impossible. And that's why rushing guys oftentimes doesn't work. Doomer KO, will Kyler want to be a Viking if we're trading Jonathan Greenard? I don't know how much that would matter to him. Wentz was number 2 overall. Yes. It's been many years. I don't know how much that would matter to him. I don't know if that he would be looking at the situation and saying, well, they moved on from a defensive player, so I can't possibly go there. Let's talk about that though. This is a great discussion. Who is, man, I should have been in on this conversation before. I'm going to need a sip of Diet Dr. Pepper because I got to think about this. Who else is in on Kyler Murray? Because it feels like, to me, if the Vikings want Kyler Murray, then Kyler Murray should be a Viking. They have the best wide receiver to offer him. They have a lot of pieces on the offensive line. At least Jordan Mason, we know, is a pretty good running back. They can add to that backfield. If they don't move Addison or Hawkinson, those are proven players. And they have a coach who I don't think the NFL massively changed its opinion of based on what happened with McCarthy last year. Like, everyone knows, yeah, they blew it. But I don't think the NFL and agents and players went, oh, okay, this guy, he's not any good. He's not a quarterback. I don't think that happened. And even if you look at public comments from Daniel Jones, where he did an interview where he was talking about Kevin O'Connell's preparation for each game. And it wasn't so good of a look for Brian Daboll, actually, when Daniel Jones said, man, we were doing stuff that I never did before in my career in terms of my week-to-week preparation with, Kevin O'Connell. So when you start to add that up, like that's what you're going to consider if you're Kyler Murray. I mean, look, the Vikings without Jonathan Greenard played well on defense. They did not melt into the ocean when he wasn't there. They played fine. Like Brian Flores is still good at his job. They can get draft picks and they can get other players, and they might not be top 5, but they might be 10th or something like that. But if you're Murray, what are you really thinking about coming to Minnesota? You're thinking, number 1, I want to prove to this league that I can win games. Number 2, I want to get that next contract. And who can get me there? But who else is going to be in the conversation? It doesn't make a lot of sense for Miami, I don't think. Malik Willis makes a lot more sense for them, or just somebody to get them through. I don't know. Marcus Mariota, Joe Flacco, your classic just get me through to next year type of quarterback. I mean, they don't have Tyreek Hill. They have Jalen Waddle and Devin Achane. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have a proven play caller. I don't know. I don't think that makes sense. The New York Jets come up a lot. Why would you do that? I mean, the New York Jets have had every quarterback there. Even someone like Tyrod Taylor, who's been decent throughout his career, was awful with the New York Jets. And every quarterback there leaves more sad than when they got there. Aaron Rodgers played the worst ball of his career there, played much better in Pittsburgh the following season with a not special team, but a better organization. Why would you go to the graveyard of the National Football League with quarterbacks in New York? I can't see it. To sign a 1-year contract to try to reinvigorate your career, you're going to go there? I don't know. And they lost Vera Tucker to injury, and now he's a free agent. So the offensive line is in trouble. And, they've got Garrett Wilson, but who else? I guess they'll probably draft someone, but it's not like it's a robust bunch of weapons. We'll see if Breece Hall's back. I don't get it. I don't get why you do that. They fired their offensive coordinator. Who did they bring? They brought in Frank Reich. Look, you guys know I grew up in Buffalo. Frank Reich is a king, and I will always see him that way. But bringing him back to be an offensive coordinator after things blew up in Carolina, he was coaching Stanford, like that doesn't sound promising. So I can't see that. Cleveland, we talked about, they're just a joke. Why would you go to a team that's a joke that has, again, not had any success with the quarterback position ever? So who does that leave? Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh is a potential option for Kyler Murray. But if you compare the supporting casts, now I think Kyler Murray with Mike McCarthy would be good. Dak Prescott was great with Mike McCarthy. So he would be good. But what do they have for weapons? What do they have for offensive line? You've got DK Metcalf, who is not the same receiver he was a couple of years ago with the Seattle Seahawks. You have an offensive line that is very mediocre. You have a run game that's losing Kenneth Gainwell, likely to free agency. Jalen Warren's okay, certainly not great. Is that really promising? I mean, you got some nice tight end action there with the Freiermuth. I don't know. Like, is that promise? And you have to play outside. You have to play, I mean, in the division for Minnesota, you do have to play at Green Bay and Chicago. That's 2 games, but you also get indoor game against Detroit, 8 indoor or 9. I don't know how many they play next year. Indoor games must be 9, right? Is it 9? Indoor games in Minnesota. And when I go through that list, who's left? Who's left that could want Kyler Murray? And I know several people have pointed out that he grew up a Vikings fan. Joe, if Jefferson doesn't elevate Murray, then nothing will. What quarterback would want to throw the ball to Jefferson? It has to be on Murray's mind. And that's why everyone's making this connection, is it just doesn't make sense for him to go anywhere else. I tried. The Falcons are another team that got brought up. Good to see you there, guard guy. The Falcons could be a team. Okay, now that's one that we haven't really talked about that actually might make sense for Kyler Murray. It could come down to the Vikings and Falcons. The Falcons are going to franchise tag Kyle Pitts. They have Drake London. They have Bijan Robinson. They have a good offensive line. And who is their... Oh, and Kevin Stefanski, but who's their offensive coordinator? I forgot who they hired. But I think Stefanski is going to call the plays. And Kevin Stefanski, well, he struggled in Cleveland, I think we know, is more than capable of being a good play caller. If they are not sold at all on Michael Penix, and Stefanski's coming in saying, I want a different quarterback, Penix just isn't my guy, then Murray makes a lot of sense there. Can he run the tush push is funny. That's funny. I think he would struggle to run the tush push. I think he would. And when we start to, when we start to add that up and we start to talk about, him versus other quarterbacks and the potential for other quarterbacks that they could bring in, it's just hard to make somebody else work better. And I think that's going to be the case for anybody. And that's the point where we don't know this for sure that Kyler Murray wants Minnesota. It just makes too much sense. But the Falcons, that one could also fit. Doomer KO, the other half of the quote that isn't said is about Brian Daboll, for sure. For sure. But, does any of us doubt the acumen of Kevin O'Connell? I mean, you can doubt, the play calling and maybe you guys have pointed out getting cute sometimes, or the struggles on third down and short, or, different things, maybe being more aggressive on fourth downs or whatever it might be, right? You can point those different things out. But I don't think any of us questions how good he is at knowing how to design a passing game that succeeds. A Truckin says, I think Kyler is more talented than Jalen Hurts. More talented? Yeah. When he came out, he was, go back and look at what he did at Oklahoma. Carl says the Rams are rumored to be interested. I mean, if you're Matthew Stafford, this is something I haven't considered. There has been really no discussion about Matthew Stafford retiring. If Matthew Stafford decided to retire all of a sudden, then yeah, Kyler Murray. It seems that there is respect in that building from, the Rams and Kyler Murray. They kind of went to battle a bunch of times. If Matthew Stafford was retiring, then yes, that would make a ton of sense. Doomer KO says, I'm picking the Falcons if the Vikings are punting on 2026. Are you sure? Because the Falcons don't have a first round pick this year because they sold it for James Pierce, who may not play in the NFL again anytime soon. After assaulting police officers while chasing down his girlfriend and smashing into her car. It's not a good scene for James Pierce or that franchise, I think. I mean, they have weapons, but the Vikings have weapons too. Stefanski, the guy just got fired from the Cleveland Browns. It's not like he's in much greater, both of them have coach of the year. It's not like he's in a wildly greater place. The Falcons do have an easier division. I would give you that. They do have an easier division. The Vikings division is pretty tough. Joe, the Jets are horrible and Murray could be under unrelenting microscope. Yeah, that's true. We are, I think, a fair media. We're certainly not of the size of the New York media. And I do think that pressure gets to some people. Of the constant, huge room of reporters. Every single thing that happens is on every single outlet. It's got a ton of attention from ESPN all the time. Sam Darnold barely got talked about on ESPN through a 14-win season. Minnesota just doesn't get that kind of attention. Randall, all the various talking heads say, why would Murray go anywhere except Minnesota if Minnesota wants you? That's why Atlanta, because of their weapons, is interesting. And I can't make anywhere else work. Maybe there's a surprise. Truck in there brings up the Rams. That'd be a big surprise. If all of a sudden Matthew Stafford announces he's retired, the NFL offseason could go crazy, folks. If he announces that he's retiring and then all of a sudden Murray's going to the Rams and not Minnesota, then what do you do? What do you do? Cause and effect. Who is your Kleinsasser and Hutchinson in this draft that the Vikings should or could get? I don't know that there is a Steve Hutchinson in this draft. There are good guards, but the Vikings are kind of set at that position right now. Kleinsasser, there is a fullback. Someone has brought him up here, and I think he talked at the combine. Is it Betterson or something like that? Someone's going to have to remind me who the fullback is. But there is a guy There's a fullback, someone who could be a blocking tight end. I haven't gotten that far in the draft. Nasaj, Matthew being a numbers guy. Have you read Warren Sharp's analysis of Murray? It's not positive. He rails on the bad, deep, and intermediate throws. What are the two of you disagreeing on when it comes to that? So, well, one thing is that a lot of people like to use expected points added, which can be a little bit dicey for me when you're assigning it to individuals. That's why I look at PFF grading individuals. In terms of his throwing in the intermediate, we just talked about this the other day. His numbers in the intermediate in 2024 were fine. His numbers throwing deep are clearly not good, but we can look at. I saw some of that, and maybe it was focused mostly on EPA, but what PFF does is they create an entire chart of passing depth. Oh, sorry. Let me get that on the screen. They create this entire passing chart. There it is, of depth and we'll look at 2024 because that makes the most sense. He only played a couple games in 2025, and the offense was similar to what the Vikings will want to do, at least similar-ish. And if we look, so you can see his entire passing depth chart here. And what I'm noticing is the intermediate areas, throwing to the left, his quarterback rating in the 10 to 19 range was 97.9. Throwing to the middle, where he was 30 for 41, 123.3. And this is where people say he can't throw, but it was 123.3 quarterback rating when he was throwing in between the numbers in the intermediate areas. And then to the right side, it was an 87.8 quarterback rating. So when I look at this, I see numbers that are fine. They're not mind-blowing, but they're fine. And the overall intermediate is up here. It was his highest PFF passing grade at 86.9 when he was throwing. And sorry if those numbers look little to you guys, but 9.6 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 104.1 quarterback rating when throwing between 10 and 19. So I didn't look at what numbers Warren Sharp was using, but I was looking at when he played in a play action type of offense that built a lot off the run with Drew Petzing. Like, how did he perform in those intermediate throws? And as you can see from those numbers, he graded well, had 104 quarterback rating overall. I mean, the downfield stuff was not great. It certainly was not. And there's no question about that. And I don't know if that can come back or not. Some of that is small sample size. If you notice, only 10% of his throws were more than 20 yards. He has been more of a short thrower in his career. So you have to adapt to that. But when I look at that, I go, I'm not sure what I'm missing here. Now, he did tear the ACL, and the team did go through a transition where they were bad in 2023. So if you're adding up, 2022 was a really rough year, tears the ACL. 2023 is a bad season. He comes back halfway through, and they're in this total transition under Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort. I'm not saying you could throw out those numbers, but I don't think it's similar to a situation that he's coming to in Minnesota. I think 2024 is much more comparable. Truckin, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate you there. Would you make the Greenard trade with a team in the top 10, then use the first round pick with Caleb Downs with a pick swap? So you're talking about like number 18 and Jonathan Greenard for a top 10 draft pick? That's an intriguing idea. I don't know how to add up the draft value to figure out if that makes sense, but it certainly sounds like if you're going to trade him, like the question there would be, is moving from 18 to 10, just for example, or 8, is that worth a second round draft pick instead? Is there similar worth there? Jumping up that many spots. My guess is that a second round pick might be worth more, but if you can get me in the top 10, I'll say it all day long about all the teams that win. They usually have top 10 draft picks. You get superstars, franchise players, Hall of Famers in the top 10. There is a very clear, I think it was Michael Lopez, who now works for the NFL, a very clear value chart of, instead of doing it by hit rate, how much value each position in the draft produced. And the top 10 was way above anything else. which makes a lot of sense, right? You get the pick of the litter of the best player in the country. Would I go from 18 to say 5, 7 with Jonathan Greenard throw in? I might do that. I might do that. Phenom says Kyler was a check down monster, tight end and running backs will eat if he comes here. Well, and remember what Kevin O'Connell was talking about last year. I mean, that he actually played. This is the funny thing about Kyler Murray. This 2024 season looks a lot like Kirk Cousins' 2023 season, where it is a lot of throws to the tight end. It is a lot of underneath stuff, but they paid TJ Hawkinson to catch the ball there. And these other guys couldn't find him. But would it be bad if, I don't know, Hawkinson caught 90 footballs and Jefferson had 85 for 1,300 yards or something? That sounds okay to me. They do need a running back who can catch the ball. That I agree with. Caleb Downs, the dude with an injured knee that may only play 5 seasons. I saw there was a report there. I don't know what to make of that. I just don't. Caleb Downs is clearly a super prospect at the safety position, but medical stuff, very, very hard for me to say, because I saw there was a report that he has this issue with his ACL, but then there were other people that came out and said that there have been guys who had this same problem, who had long careers, and it might not be that much of an issue. I don't really know what to make of it. There's a few areas that I struggle with. Medical stuff is one of them. I don't understand. Not only do I not understand how how does an ACL even become degenerative? What does that even really mean? Some of you are doctors out there who are better at this than me, but guessing off of reports is really tough. Guessing off of, hey, somebody said this is what happened to somebody's medical situation. I mean, I don't know what to do with that. That was kind of like the corner last year from Michigan, who was really talented, but dropped because he had a knee issue. It's like, I don't know. I mean, is that should you not? I don't know. He's very talented. That's what I know about Downs. You'd have to ask the medical people what they think of that, because immediately a bunch of other folks came out and said, no, it's not really the case. But is it? I mean, the Vikings would know. I think what the question is really insinuating is just a top 5 to 7 pick. Would you move up from 18 into the top 10 to take a top player there? I think the answer might be actually yes. Maurice, did KOC have anything to do with Cleveland drafting Johnny Manziel? So that's funny, right? Wasn't the story with Manziel, and I actually think that him and KOC became fairly close during his time there, or at least there was a moment where they did, but there was the story that Manziel texted the owner of the Browns, like, come get me or something. And they did, because the owner liked the moxie or whatever. I believe that was the story. That doesn't seem great. Jay, besides the Oregon Ducks tight end, who in the draft is your favorite player for the Vikings to pick at 18? Well, you know what? Sounds like you want a draft sim. Should we do a draft sim? Oh, that's the free agents. Should we do a draft sim? Why don't we do a draft sim? Why don't we wrap on a draft sim? There is no number of draft sims that are too much for right now. So why don't we do that? I think we've covered a lot of Kyler Murray over the last 2 days, just a little bit. It feels like the momentum is growing there, and maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. We'll see. But I think we've covered that bit of the conversation, as well as Greenard. So why don't we do a draft sim to end the night? All right. Let's go to PFF's mock draft simulator, and we'll take a look at the start of the draft. So if the Vikings were doing what Truckin suggested, and they were trading up to use Greenard to trade up into the top 10, let's take a look at who they would be potentially picking. Ruben Bain, Caleb Downs, David Bailey. David Bailey? I think Bailey's going to go 2. He is not the favorite presently on FanDuel to go number 2. Let me see who is. Let's see. Or is he the favorite? No, it's Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese number 2. and then David Bailey at plus 150. Would I do that for David Bailey where it's Greenard moving from, yeah, I think I would. Moving from 18 up into the top 10 to take someone like Bailey? Yes. Yes, I would. Or even Sonny Styles. I would probably do that too. Let's see. So Cleveland takes a tackle. Jeremiah Love goes 5th overall. Sonny Styles goes 7th. Carnell Tate. Oh, Arvell Reese dropped in this one to 10th. That's interesting. Carnell Tate I don't think is dropping because of his 40. Caleb Banks goes 11th. CJ Allen. Avion Terrell went early in this one too. This has changed around from our first bit of draft sims, actually. Mekhi Lemon, Keldrick Falk, Jordan Tyson, Jermod McCoy. So those are the guys that are off the board. The best player on the board for the Vikings is Dylan Thieneman. No surprise. I mean, it just makes so much sense. But so here's Akeem Messidor. I think it's Messidor. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, tell me. What a beast this year he was. I think is he older? Yeah, he's like 25. That's kind of the problem. But he was an animal for Miami this year. Just an absolute freak. He's on the board. So is Cassius Howell. Cassius Howell also had big production, crazy pass rush win rate. So now we should do this draft sim as if they traded Jonathan Greenard. If they traded Jonathan Greenard and Cassius Howell is on the board and Dylan Thieneman, I'm taking Cassius Howell. I'm not taking Messidor because he's 25 years old. How old is Howell? He's pretty young, right? They don't have his age listed here. I think he's fairly young. His production, though, is phenomenal, and I'm going to do that. I am going to take Cassius Howell with the top draft pick. Things are different now, folks. The draft sims are different now, folks. Oh, wait, I only did the first round. Okay, let me reset. Let me do 3 rounds. Got to do at least 3 rounds. I'm doing that, though. If now we're in a situation, is he on the board? Now he's not on the board. Okay. Well, attempt number 2, Cassius Howell goes off the board, and so does Messidor. So now we're looking at, and Thieneman. So now we're looking at a different draft sim where Keldrick Falk, CJ Allen, Jordan Tyson. Wow, this is very different. Now I think we're looking at taking Kenyon Sadiq or Peter Woods. That might be the case. But the drafted free agency this year, I got to say, after a season of that the Minnesota Vikings were on the field, this offseason is wild. Lee Hunter is there. This might be a trade down. I think this is a trade down situation. Move to 26. Can we get number 60? I don't know if we can get number 60. How about number 91? Okay, we could get 91. Let's move down and get number 91. Now it's Denzel Boston, Kenyon Sadiq, Peter Woods. I think I'd just take Kenyon Sadiq here. Even though I keep doing that in a lot of draft sims, I'm going to do it anyway. Long-term and short-term player. Second round on the board, AJ Halsey, the safety from LSU. Also, if we want, and I don't know if we get another wide receiver, but Chris Johnson, the corner from San Diego State, is on the board. I think I'm going to do that. Jadarian Price is interesting here, but I think I'm going to go corner with Chris Johnson. We're looking long-term corner. Third round, I keep taking Jake Slaughter. Let's see what else is on the board. Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker from Texas Tech. Deontay Lawson, another good prospect. Let's go Rodriguez, though. Undersized a little bit, but I think he's got a lot of power to him. And now in the fourth round, some good receivers. Skylar Bell from Connecticut. Deion Banks. Maybe Zakee Wheatley is a good pick here. Genesis Smith, the safety, is on the board. They have to figure out what they're going to do at safety. Running back Seth McGowan. Let's do that. Let's get the running back. And then one more pick because we made the trade down. And we will go Genesis Smith, the safety. So in a draft, I was trying to change it up for if Cassius Howell was there and they traded Jonathan Greenard, I'd do that. But then in my 3-round mock or draft sim, he was gone. So I end up with Kenyon Sadiq, Chris Johnson, the corner from San Diego State, Texas Tech linebacker Jacob Rodriguez, running back Seth McGowan, and safety from Arizona Genesis Smith. And there you have a couple different draft sims where you get an edge rusher. It has to be a consideration, though, because everything that I've heard from people coming out of Indy is that the edge rushing class was very impressive. It now has to be something that's talked about if Jonathan Greenard is going to be moved. But the biggest shift, I think, is in this is very telling about their mentality. This team is not thinking just 2026. They are thinking big picture, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But how does that mesh with if Kyler Murray's here? How does that mesh with where JJ McCarthy is at? Kevin O'Connell? Whew, we got a lot to talk about, and we will continue to do so. So earlier, there's two podcasts already that happened today, by the way. This is a 2-hour and 15-minute live stream after two podcasts that already happened today. Chris Trapasso, we did a big breakdown of the combine, 3 interesting players from each position of need, which of course we didn't do edge rusher. And then Jeremiah Searles breaking down what he thinks they should do at quarterback, as well as with JJ McCarthy. And then we talked about the draft as well. So there's a lot there. Steve Pelazzolo is coming on the show tomorrow. And if there's more news, we'll go live again. Anytime there's news that's worth talking about, we'll have a live show at night. And then free agency week every single night, including on free agency day when it first starts. It's going to be 2 different live streams that day, early and late. I mean, there's so much to discuss. Why not? Why not talk more football? All right. Well, thanks everybody for popping in, and we're getting close to 15,000 subscribers. So feel free to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to answer the FanDuel question of the day in the comment section. And folks, we will talk very, very soon. Oh, and check out my article, purpleinsider.football, on Kyler Murray. And I'm going to have more about Jonathan Greenard there as well. So lot to do here in the NFL offseason. Very exciting times, folks. We will talk to y'all soon. Thanks for dropping in.